So good afternoon, you guys. So the YouTuber Novi actually did another video that I really like, and I actually like, shared, and subscribed to his channel and that video. And it was about like how AEW could, how ROH could be a lot better. And I honestly think that, with ROH, it could be a better version of NXT. Honestly, if they actually cared about making money. And I also will tell people the disturbing thing about ROH down in Texas, that the maximum ticket price was actually $55, and that was for both Death Before Dishonor and to their Arlington shows, and also that they're doing a bunch of tapings down there. And what Tony Khan did say was, when he came down, he said that, okay, you guys, if automatically those weekend shows are free. So imagine this, you guys, that you go then Arlington, Texas, you pay $55 for Death Before Dishonor or AEW Collision and Battle of the Belts, and then you automatically get like two free tickets. So automatically you're watching three shows for $55, which is obviously not a good thing, because that's such like a waste of that's such a waste of money for AEW, and it really shows that they don't know how to make money with Ring of Honor and Collision, and they need to just really figure out a way. It can't just be offering good ticket prices. Tony Khan's operating on a loss. So without further ado, I really want to just write down, I have roughly about 10 ways ROH can be better, and I'll give you at least 1 or 2 minutes. And there's some things that Novi said, and I actually am gonna like repeat it, and I'm also going to like thank him for that. Ways to improve Ring of Honor. I do agree with Novi that ROH should be YouTube only, and the reason why I would say that it should be YouTube only is because like you're charging $10 a month. And then also too, like, again, as he said, you put more eyes on the product by actually making it, free. And then the other issue is that, as he said, there's a bunch of wrestling shows. WWE has Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and then there's also, I think, 2.205 Live. And then there's also the UK show. So you have 5 shows, and sometimes with WWE, they had pay-per-views back-to-back. Or if you watch WWE and AEW, maybe back-to-back pay-per-views. AEW, you have Collision, ROH, Dynamite, and you also have pay-per-views. So sometimes that's 3 or 4 shows a week. And if you watch WWE and everything like that, you have like 11 shows. And then also if you watch TNA, you have another show on top of that. And then if you watch... I forgot the name of that promotion, Game Changer Wrestling. Then that's another one, So there's definitely, 11 or 12 shows really. So what's the appeal of Ring of Honor if it's actually going to cost you like $10 a month, really? Definitely, the pay per views should be like, I would say maybe like $30, and you should be able to buy it on YouTube to watch it live. Just so it's a little bit more easy to access, because some people don't know about the Ring of Honor app. But I do think charging $10 a month, it just limits exposure, really. And so I really agree that having it for free, having it be on YouTube where an audience can see it, having, to pay the YouTube ads, or having like YouTube ads on AEW television saying, check out Ring of Honor and everything like that, just to kind of advertise it more, that's good. Or even do that for the Ring of Honor pay-per-views. I think that would be better. The next thing that I want to say is, I think another big point that Novi overlooked, they need to advertise Ring of Honor more, because there's a lot of people who don't know about Ring of Honor. And also, the other big issue is that they don't really advertise their pay-per-views that well. Like with Supercard of Honor, I felt that I was very disappointed with Tony Khan. You have a show in WrestleMania country, Philadelphia, last year, and you do nothing to hype any of the matches or hype anything on Dynamite or treat it like a big deal. And you're happy with 3,000 out of 12,000 people. No, 3,000 out of 16,000 people going to the Leah Curtis Center. So that's another big issue, is that they have to advertise it more on on AEW television. And that just means with your YouTube ads, you have a Ring of Honor ad, you even go over a match card or something like that on your show. No, maybe on your show you can do that maybe one or two times, but also during the ads you can have at least, two or three Ring of Honor ads, because you really have to just tell everybody, it's a show worth seeing. The next thing that I add, and I agree with Novi, and I've said this many times, that Ring of Honor needs to be a developmental or a better version of NXT. What it means is that you take all the Ring of Honor wrestlers that you have, and then you split them up into two groups. You split them up into people that are ready for television and can make money, and then you separate them into people who need some work. And then you also have a third group of people that will never be a star one day, so you have to kind of nix them. And I think the ultimate goal for all NXT people is your goal is to be on AEW television, because you have to have keep circulating people. Because the problem is that if just like with WWE every single year, you see how they have the drafts, they see how you bring up some people from the roster. Really, you have to actually, you actually have to just really. You really have to kind of really consider people. You have to really have new people all the time, really, or else the show gets boring. So what I mean by this is, okay, you look at ROH. You have AEW has a problem with their women's roster. So what would happen if you have Athena go to the main roster? What would happen if you had Layla Hirsch, Billy Starks, and you also have somebody like Nyla Rose, who should be holding the ROH women's title, and now she goes to maybe Collision or another program a little bit stronger. Oh, and then maybe if you hire 10 other women that are not ROH related, but 10 people who are developmental and they have potential, and you put them on ROH for a while, and then once they get better, you put them on the main roster. So that would be good. You also look at your men's division. You look at the Von Erich boys. Excellent example. You need more tag team. So what would happen if they're on ROH for a year and then they're on the main roster? Or what would happen if you have the trios team, Dustin Rhodes and the Von Erichs, and they say I want more, and then they say something okay, maybe they're on ROH for 6 months, and then they said, okay, we want to hold both the ROH titles and the AW trios titles. And then you can kind of make it that they lose for being overambitious. There's always a way to kind of develop some talents that you already have, really, and definitely in a year or two put them on the main roster. And I'm talking about people you really have never heard of, either some ROH people or some people that you sign, really. And then also, I would say that get some people off ROH, and I would say that there's people like John Morrison is a great example. John Morrison should be on the AEW roster, and also Dalton Castle. I think both of them, in my opinion, should not be on ROH anymore, or even Mark Briscoe or Athena, because they're just too big for ROH, really. And what does John Morrison add to ROH? When he's been a former WWE champion, he's done a lot of things in WWE. He's the former Impact champion. So why the hell would you have somebody like that on that roster, really? And I think the last thing that I would say is it's okay to have it's okay to have AEW people in ROH. So obviously, you have to trim the fat a little bit in AEW, and sometimes you may have some people that should be on AEW television. They may not be ready, or maybe at this point, there's too many people. So what I would do is, honestly, I would have had the Hardys in ROH. I would have also, I'm happy with Sammy Guevara, Daniel Garcia. I would have had MJF and Adam Cole when they had the had the ROH championships. Imagine how much their pay-per-views would have done if you had them defend that. Also, too, Nyla Rose is a great example. So, and now you have Dustin Rhodes, so it's good. And the reason why you do that is because of two things. Then you make the ROH shows, must see really because you're having some main event stars on it. And then also the other thing too is that when you buy a pay per view and you have some AEW people on it, people are gonna want to watch it because you have some people that are draws. What would happen if Adam Copeland said something like he wants to be the ROH champion, and then you did a triple threat between Adam Copeland, Mark Briscoe, and also you know and also Dustin Rhodes or something like that. What would happen if you have Dustin Rhodes versus Mark Briscoe? What would happen if you have Swerve Strickland versus Mark Mark Briscoe title versus title? What would have happened if you had Chris Jericho versus Mark Briscoe? You see what I'm saying? It's good to have a mix of people, especially people who haven't been doing anything. The other thing that I would say is that they need to focus more on the women's division, and it's for two things. That definitely there's people who like women's wrestling, and I would also kind of say that you need to kind of be experimental with this. Like I said, I really think they should have a women's blood and guts match. The whole thing with Layla Hirsch, um, I'm, I think Dionzo is her name. Whoever the one that she have a match with. Why not have Layla, that street fight thing you guys they did? They should have like a steel cage match. They should have like Texas Bull Rope. They should kind of have more hardcore matches between women. And then if that works, you should do that in the main roster really. So you can try out new ideas. What would happen if you actually had a woman, talk more on the microphone? What would happen if you were like, okay, Layla Hirsch, you're beaten and bloody? What would happen if they gave her the microphone? So you can do more experimentation with the women's division because you have to do something different. I know with AW, they focus more on the men because obviously both men and women draw in wrestling, but it's traditionally been men really. But I think that you can kind of focus more on women that don't get them as much exposure. What would happen if you had, 2 out of 3 tables match, and instead of that being Nyla Rose and Athena on a random Dynamite, what would happen if you made a pay per view type of thing? That like keep on like experimenting and trying new things, and having more women speak on the microphone really. So then then what's gonna work really. I think that would be great. One thing that I do agree with Novi is that he said there needs to be a hierarchy system, 100%. Because the problem with both AEW and also ROH is that there's no hierarchy system. Like the best thing that I would say is that in ROH, you have Dalton Castle, who's a former ROH champion, but now he has tag team matches, triple matches, and he fights random people on Dynamite and loses. You have Mark Briscoe. And I think with Mark Briscoe, on AEW television, yes, he's won some matches, he's lost some matches, he's in tag teams and triple matches. But the problem is that, if you want to book him like a real ROH champion, he should not be in tag team matches. He should rarely lose. But also, too, you need to always say, he's the ROH champion, or you should say something like, or you should kind of promote his matches a little bit. And you should also have involvement with people that he's facing. I also think that, another thing about it is that, with him being the ROH champion, he and Swerve should have some beef with each other or some like, what, I'm better than you because, I'm holding this championship. There has to be some type of, hierarchy and also use that to play off each other. I also will say, you look at something like John Morrison, excellent example. He has random matches. Isn't he the former ECW champion, the former Impact champion? Why is he just a random wrestler? You look at somebody like Dustin Rhodes. He's in the trios division. I'm in ROH really, and my other question would be, isn't like, look at everything he's really accomplished. He should be kind of like a veteran or an OG really. So he shouldn't have a random match with Anthony Nese or something like that and lose. So you have to kind of make sure you have the people that are the higher ups and the people that are on the bottom really. And as I said, the people that are higher up should be the veterans. It should be people who have been former ROH champions and have a long reign, have won heavyweight titles in other companies, type of thing. Really, like another great example is Brian Cage. He's the former Impact Wrestling champion. I believe he's won that like 2 or 3 times really. So why is he, so easy to be squashed if he's in ROH or on AEW? The next thing I would say is that you need to you need to say like muscles matter real with that. For example, as I said, Shane Taylor should be undefeated. Brian Cage should be undefeated. You look at somebody like the like Heavy Machinery, if I'm saying that right, or the House of Black with Brody King. Like Brody King hits a finisher on somebody in ROH, that should be the end of it. Really, you cannot do something like have Brody King be pinned, or even like have Heavy Machinery be pinned so easily, because it has to go by what you've accomplished in other companies, if you won ROH titles or ROH championships. And then also you have to follow that physics of muscles matter. Really, why should somebody like Atlantis Jr. Get a pinfall on Brian Cage? That makes no sense really. And Brian Cage being a former champion, so they also have to get back to physics really. Like I do agree with the hierarchy, and the hierarchy really just needs to also reinforce, physical looks, and then also needs to reinforce, prior championships, and championships that do matter. Like obviously, if Atlantis had like the AAA title in Mexico, but Brian Cage has the Impact Wrestling Championship or a couple of ROH championships, Brian Cage should always have an edge, really, type of thing, really. Or if you have like Hologram, I mean, he's won like so many titles in Mexico and he's on ROH, and Shane Taylor's won some titles in America, but Shane Taylor's a bigger guy. He may have won less titles. Shane Taylor should have an easy time beating him because of physics. You can't just say, oh well, he's won. You got to make it make sense, really. I also feel with that is that if you have a hierarchy system, you avoid Marvel versus Capcom, which is you take two random wrestlers, they have a match really, and like I said, you have Brian Cage versus Sammy Guevara. Why should Sammy Guevara beat Brian Cage, or something like that, or Shane Taylor, or even like if you have Sammy Guevara and Atlantis Jr. and Hologram versus the Gates of Agony. Why should the Gates of Agony lose? Because it's three skinny people versus three muscular people. So you have to kind of also have a hierarchy system like that to avoid Marvel versus Capcom. You're taking random people together and you're having matches and you're not making it believable because smaller people can always beat big people easily. The other thing that I've said is that you need to have an option C. And we take that from TNA Wrestling, because with option C, that just means that ultimately, let's say you have Athena and you have like a pay-per-view called, maybe Death Before Dishonor, or you have something called, Night of Champions or Clash of Champions or Winner Takes All or something like that. And you should have Athena defend her reign. She has the option of facing an opponent on ROH or that she sees worthy, or she has an option of facing a opponent on AEW television that she feels worthy, either one. Or she has another option of, okay, this is what I'll do. Let's scratch that. She has an option. This is her first. These are her two options. This goes for Mark Briscoe. She picks one person from ROH, and she picks one person from AEW, and she says that you're both worthy to have my championship. So they both fight each other at the beginning of the show, and at the very last match, or the penultimate match, they have to fight Athena, and while she's holding the ROH title. Or the other thing that you can do is that she says something like, you know what, I've been ROH for a long time. I want to face the AEW Women's Championship. So she gives up her title reign, and then those two people that she picks, they have a match on the show for her ROH Women's Championship, and they become the ROH Women's Champion. And then she faces Toni Storm. And then you have to like make them win. And then I'll also do that for the men's as well, really. You do something where you exactly have the same thing. You vacate the men's title, or you don't vacate the men's title, and then you do the exact same thing. You have like two people from AEW versus ROH. They have a match at the beginning of the show, and then last match of the night, which one's to draw, like the women's title or the men's title. Um, like that'll be either the penultimate or the main event match. And the main event match, you have the winner of those two actually face the ROH champion, and they would have to beat the ROH champion to get the title. Or you have Mark Briscoe give that match up, give up his title, and then he faces Swerve Strickland for it. He faces Swerve Strickland for the AW championship. And just like what they did with Option C, you have to have the ROH champion win a couple of times, really. Because again, like they did with Austin Aries, they actually thought there was actually some talk with Austin Aries when they first did Option C of not having him win. But then again, you have to have people win that, because otherwise it's like, why would I even want to hold the title if people are not capable of winning the those championships? I think that would be a really good option, because then it's something to look forward to. The next thing that I would like to say is that you can defend the ROH men and women's title or tag titles, but very rarely at your big shows. That I do think that every year at Wembley Stadium, you need to have the ROH men's title and the ROH women's title defended, or you need to have the ROH men's champion and the women's champion having a match on the AEW roster. So if you were going to do blood and guts or a triple threat match with Mark Briscoe, I can accept that. But what I will not accept is Mark Briscoe not being at Wembley Stadium. What I will not accept is Athena not being at Wembley Stadium, because you look at Mark Briscoe and everything that he's done. You look at how he was at Blood and Guts, he was at Supercard he was at Death Before Dishonor, and then he was at Collision, and more than likely he was at the taping the next day. So he had 4 grueling matches in a week, and middle finger to AEW for not for not having him on Wembley Stadium. He beyond deserves that, and that's why that's important. It elevates the ROH title. It prevents them having a stupid match like Stokely Hathaway versus Stokely Hathaway and Tomohiro Ishii and Willow Nightingale and Chris Statlander. So I really just think that that's just one of the things. That's one of the reasons why it's good to have those titles defended. Really, Also, you look at somebody like NXT. What would happen if they have, if you did something like, okay, well, last year Carmelo, I believe it was Ilya Dragunov. What would happen if you had Ilya Dragunov versus the winner between Twerk Williams and Carmelo Hayes at WrestleMania, and then you have like Trick Williams actually win the title, and it really elevates Trick Williams, but he's going to be on NXT for like maybe another year or two. Or you have like 1 year where Braun Breaker versus somebody, and you defend the NXT title on WrestleMania. Like, imagine how much that would boost somebody. Imagine how much that would make somebody a bigger deal, and saying, okay, well, this is what we do. What would happen if you did that with ROH people? Imagine if you had someone like Dalton Castle be the ROH champion, and imagine how much that would boost him if he was at Wembley Stadium. And what would happen if everybody's like reacting to his gimmick and everything like that, really? Or what would happen if you have Billy Starks or Athena or Queen Aminata at Wembley Stadium facing Athena, and even though they lose, imagine how much that would boost them. I would say that you need to have good storylines. I have like 3 storylines that I would do. And I know like a fan of Dustin Rhodes, so I'll try to like I'll try to like try to make it not all about him. I think Dustin Rhodes versus Dustin Rhodes going after the ROH champion. Like one like last chance at a main event at a heavyweight title, at being a heavyweight champion. Dustin Rhodes, that would make a great storyline. That would be emotional and captivating. The next thing that I would do is I would have Don Callis takes over ROH. Like, imagine if the whole Don Callis family, with the blessing of the Young Bucks, took over ROH. Like, Takeshita and Powerhouse Hobb become a tag team. Takeshita goes after the TV title. Kyle Fletcher goes after the goes after like the television title. What would happen if you had MJF join the Don Callis family, and then he actually holds the ROH men's title, or other things like that. Like that would be good. My other option would be Christian Cage rules the world. So Christian Cage wants to become, a duo champion. He wants to hold the 6-man title, and he wants to hold the trios title. So he goes to ROH, he gets that, he instigate people. He says now it's 2 paychecks. No, 3 paychecks, because I'm taking one from Luchasaurus. Or he says something like, I'm taking Luchasaurus ROH paycheck and I'm giving it to Mama Wayne because, Mama Wayne, her beautiful hair is going to pay for itself, really. She needs to be wine and dined and manicured or something like that, really. So you kind of do our Christian Cage rules the world, where he does like his duo champion. He also has like Luchasaurus like have like 2-on-1 or 3-on-1, and then he talks to the referee in the Bucks saying, okay, that just means the team gets disqualified if they triple team or double team on him, and Luchasaurus goes through that, and then eventually you have Luchasaurus versus Christian Cage. So that would be a good story. I would also say too that you can do something like definitely you can have the trios title with the Von Erich boys, and then eventually the Von Erich boys become a tag team and they go to the main event roster. You can do something like you can have Top Flight or the Infantry do so well, and then they go to the main event roster. What would happen if you did something, or even like Matt Taven and Mike Bennett? Like that would be a good feud, like a rivalry between them. What would happen if you actually had like FTR on a show? Like the Infantry says, like we know that we can beat the best tag team, and they face FTR, really. Or what would happen if they talk about facing FTR, saying you're the best tag team, they do good, and then what happens is that the Young Bucks suspends them or fines them like $50,000 for saying that they're the best team, or the Young Bucks interfere, the Acclaimed interfere, or whatever, really. There's so many like tie-ins that you can do, really. I would also say, I do that I would say have star exclusive people. That's one of the biggest issues with AEW, because again, you have Mark Briscoe, and he's on all the shows, really, and I don't mind that he's the ROH champion, but if you have somebody like Nyla Rose, who's all over the place, like she's on AEW television sometimes, she's on Collision sometimes, she's on ROH sometimes, it's like, why does she get that privilege? It makes no sense, really. But then also too, you have a good product. If you did something like saying, okay, if you want to see Dustin Rhodes, keep him on Collision for like 2 years. If you want to see, Athena or Billy Starks or John Morrison or Sammy Guevara or Mark Briscoe or a couple other people, they just stick to the show, really. And as I said, that my number one rule would be, unless you're holding the ROH men's champion or women's champion, you're not allowed to jump brands, really. Unless you start a feud with somebody and it's really good and that person goes to ROH for a while. Like, again, if you have the Infantry versus FTR and they're talking smack and it's actually leading, it's drawing attention, and then, FTR is on regular television and the Infantry invade or something like that, So you have to kind of do that. It should primarily be on one show, unless a rare occasion they go to another show. And then also, I think the final thing, as we talked about, there should be a new leader. Tony Khan has way too many responsibilities, and one of the things that helps him out is having match after match, really, because that does not take a lot of thought. So I think that what I would do is this, that there are wrestlers that are retired. So I would say that you could have Bryan Danielson, you can have Sting, you can have Dustin Rhodes, you can have Adam Copeland, and you can also, like, as people talked about, you can have Scott D'Amore. There, you can take 10 people from you. You can take like 5 people from YouTube. You can take Novi. You can take me. You can take OTRS Central, and you can take a couple of people, and then you can kind of just say, okay, you look at everybody, you look what everybody has to say, really, and then you kind of say, okay, well, here are 5 people, 5 veterans. And then here are 5 people from YouTube, and we can come up with a good show, really. And then you can do something like, okay, well, if it's too many butting heads, Novi gets the heavyweight division, He works with like Sting on the heavyweight division. I work with Dustin Rhodes on the tag team division. You work with OTRS Central, and he talks about the women's division, and he may get a couple of women wrestlers working with him to actually make that division really, really good. What would happen if you hired Mickey James, or somebody, or like you hired like maybe like somebody like Vince Russo who did the Knockouts division really good, and or some people who were doing good booking in TNA wrestling when they had the Knockout divisions, or you did stuff like that really, or you brought in Scott D'Amore and Bryan Danielson. They kind of just said, okay, this is how we're going to do things, and it's good for Tony Khan, because what would happen if you had people doing such a great job and then they say, okay, well, Tony, now let me take care of Rampage. Now let me take care of AEW Collision. You focus on Dynamite, or maybe you need to have a substitute, really. So whenever you're too busy or whatever, I'm going to take care of Dynamite, and just pass the power, really, because he can't really be running everything, and it's just too much, and it becomes a situation that I feel where having matches are easy because that doesn't take a lot of thought, really, but having a story going into matches are good. So I think that ultimately it should be an opportunity to experiment with new writers. And I think the number one thing I have to say is that Vince Russo's going to die, Jim Cornette's going to die, Dustin Rhodes is dead, Triple H is going to die, and then there's a lot of people who are going to die really soon. In the next like 30 years, a lot of the great writers and promoters, they're all going to be dead, really, because a lot of them are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, really. So you really have to create the next generation, work with people who are going to be experimental, and that's kind of the biggest issue. And that's the thing that AEW can do very well, because the problem is you can't just have Tony doing that, because dumbass, you're becoming Vince McMahon light, really, without the sexual predatory behavior, because that's what Vince did. He took on too much, really. And then the last thing I think Novi said, and this is the most important one of the most important one, is that it needs to be belt exclusive. For example, I do agree that some belts need to be unified. So what would happen if you took the Trios title off of Christian Cage, you gave it to the Von Erichs, and that just became the six-man titles? What would happen if you just had a women's tag team title in ROH? What would happen if you had the women's television champ? You don't need a you already have that with Mercedes Moné, so that's good. But what would happen if you had the pure title? You don't need a AEW men's pure title. So there's some titles that should be in ROH, really. And then my last thing that I would say is that I would want ROH to be a 2-hour show, really. And I think with AEW, I would not mind if since you're booking ROH on since you're booking like ROH on regular television, I would kind of say that that there will be a couple of things. I think that, say, if you're going to book ROH on regular television, and you're doing it at like the shows, really, I don't mind like a show being 4 hours. You start at 7, you film Ring of Honor, you film another hour of Ring of Honor, and that's that, really. You don't do something like stay around for ROH and you make it until midnight or whatever, really. But I think like a 2-hour show would be good. If you do something like have an Impact Zone, or do it at the ES Sports Arena, or you have a couple of shows at like Kia Forum and other things like that, then that would be good, really. There is a need for ROH, but it has to like be appealing, and it doesn't really have that appeal. So I hope my suggestions help. Novi, you have a hell of a YouTube channel, my boy. You're very articulate. You have some gusto in your voice. You have some. Yeah, you hook people. You hook people. I was about to say you're like Dusty Rhodes, and no, you're not like Dusty Rhodes, but you're able to hook people. I come off like a boring college professor, so I like the ideas that Novi had. I've had some of these ideas before, but it's definitely good to watch some of these videos and be like, hey, like I'll just do my own response to it, or I would even just add to what he says, really. Because I've done that before, so with other people. But like I do think ROH can be a lot better. And I'm happy that I also, just like him, I was a little bit more like giving you guys a little bit meat on the bones on ideas and how it can be better. So ROH, it can be better. I got a lot of here are all my ideas, and I also think Novi has some great ideas as well, really. So ROH, it can be better. It needs to be better. and you can draw an audience more than just $55 tickets down in Texas.